live. Let's see. Are we live? Live now. We are live, so I guess you guys can see me. Looks like we're live. So what's happening, everyone? Chilling, Ty, hanging out. So I tried to go live earlier. You know, the thing was, it's my internet, man. I called them twice and I don't know what's going on. So I couldn't go live with the OBS that we've been using. That allows me to be able to show you guys videos and graphics when I talk. And that's why I was showing you guys the interview with that Jordan had last week with the founder of the Movement for the People's Party, Nick Brenna. So, yeah, that kind of settled that. What I think what we're going to do is just have that video up, and you can go. We'll post that video, and you guys can be able to see the rest of that, the rest of it. So I guess what I'm gonna get into today is I want to talk about. So what I'm gonna end up doing is, like, I don't know if you guys remember the last time when I first started going live, I would just turn the computer around and then let you guys see the video. So that's what I'm gonna do now, because that's how we're gonna have to work it. I mean, right now it look like we only got 4 people watching, a good 4 people. Let's make it happen, baby. 4 good people too. I appreciate that. I don't think any notifications even came out. I'm looking on my phone. No notifications on my phone. No notifications. Oh, I guess right now the Young Turks is playing as well. So we've got their live right now. So we've got a little competition. I see who winning. With 5 people watching me, I see who winning. But anyway, hey, Squirrel Lips, appreciate you. I know you can be anywhere else, but you chose to be with me. Yo, Ty, I hope your pain is doing better. Hey, Doug, you know what? My pain is actually, it's hard to measure, really, because I've been taking medication as well. So it's kind of hard to really measure how true the pain is, because I have been on a medication, which is kind of bad if you think about it, because I've been on, Percocet for over a month now, like almost 2 months. So I do feel, I can move it. I haven't been able to run. I tried to run one time. It almost felt like my shoulder was going to come out the socket. So I didn't want to agitate it anymore. But yeah, man, thanks for asking. Tamiri, was it? Oh, Tarimi. So yeah, that's what's going on right now. So I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. I know you can be anywhere else in the world, but you'd rather be with me. So that's good. So a couple of things I wanted to talk about. Like I said, the video initially that I had going on when the live stream was buffering, I'll post that on the website later and you guys can see it. I don't want to have you guys watch that over. It was an interview between Nick Brenna and Jordan Cheriton. Nick Brenna is the founder of the Movement for a People's Party. So yeah, he interviewed with Jordan last week, and so what I'm trying to do is just pace it out every time I go live. Show 15 minutes. It's about 45-minute video, so I showed 15 on Monday. Initially was trying to show 15 today and another 15 tomorrow. So yeah, that's my intention. So now I want to bring up how funny it is. Like, just I don't even want to say it's surprising. It's not surprising. The hypocrisy in the Republican Party is amazing. It's amazing to actually witness. You think about them. They'll call liberals or people that's to the left, they'll say, "Oh, they're snowflakes. They're whining. They're crying." But look at them now. You got the legislation in Wisconsin and Nebraska. The Republican, I think they have the Republican majority right now. They're trying to hurry up and change certain laws so that the governor won't have as much power as it's been able to have in the past. You know, you think about Rick Scott and in Wisconsin and everything he did and all the power he had and everything that he was able to do. Now they know that they lost the gubernatorial race. They're trying to hurry up and change these laws and pass these laws so the governor won't have as much leverage and as much, you know, power to do certain things. And I think one of the things in Wisconsin is he wanted to overturn some of the blocks that they put in for the Obamacare. And, you know, you look at throughout the nation, think about how many times have we heard Donald Trump talking about, oh, there's voter fraud, you know, what the Democrats are doing. We need to watch these. And the only voter fraud, and this gives you kind of an understanding and it gives you a clear kind of picture of what could happen if there were actual voter fraud. We are, today's the 4th. We're 2 days from a month. We could say we're a month out of the midterms, right? A month out. And there were voter, I don't know if you guys read it, but in North Carolina, there was some voter fraud. And it was found out within a month. They found out. So if there were a widespread of voter fraud, we would be able to find out. You know, the government would be able to figure that out. It would come up. You know what I mean? I mean, you look at what happened, and that's what I'm going to talk about right now, what happened in North Carolina. And within a month, they were able to find out that there were voter fraud, were able to actually talk to a couple people that was actually involved in it, not involved in it as far as initiating it, but as far as being a victim of it. So I'm gonna show you guys this video that I have on it, and then I want to read this article from CNN Politics on the man at the center of the North Carolina election fraud probe turned in hundreds of absentee ballots requests. So that's what generally what I mean.
I'm not sure.
She's a special one. So that's, I don't even want to say her name because she's going to say something, but it's my speaker thing. So anyway, so essentially what he did is he went to different homes that were, that different people that wasn't on the voter registration. And then they got a group of people walking around, getting these people and have them signing these absentee ballots. And then they would put the person that they were going to vote for on them. They did it themselves. They wouldn't have the person. They'll just have the person sign their name. And it's kind of amazing what they did. But I want to show you guys this video, and then we can. Well, I'll read the article. So it says the man in the center of an election fraud investigation in North Carolina congressional race turned in nearly half of the requests for absentee ballots in a single county. Records released Tuesday by the state's election board shows. Leslie McCraw Dulles, a veteran political operative in Bladen County, who was convicted of insurance fraud in 1992, was connected to the questionable absentee ballot activity in another election, is at the center of this probe in an unusual activity in this county. So this actually kind of mirrors what they're talking about on the video. So I'll just go to the video, and then we can, you guys can tell me how you feel from there. So let me grab this video, and then you'll be able to see what's going on. So like I said before, I had all this stuff queued, but then my internet wasn't working, so I had to use the live view. The live view is kind of the thing that we use when we're on the road. And Yeah, I'm gonna have to turn everything around so you guys can see the video. So yep. Where is, oh shoot. My bad. Sorry you guys, I just took this thing off because I'm a special breed of person. This is where the actual video is on. So don't worry about it. This is, seems like it's all over the place, but I got it all under control. Don't worry. No worries. What is going on?
Emma Shipman is this story in a nutshell. She had no intention of voting until a woman showed up at her door.
But do you remember requesting an absentee ballot? So you don't know how that absentee ballot showed up?
I don't. I really don't.
Shipman is now at the center of a vote fraud investigation in Bladen County, North Carolina. She's one of several voters coming forward to talk about a group of people showing up at doorsteps, offering to help fill out absentee ballots, and taking the ballots away with no idea what happened. And no, Emma Shipman doesn't even know who she voted for.
No, but when you picked, when the names were picked, you want this guy or that guy, this gal or that guy, was that you picking them? So you don't know what happened with your vote nor your ballot?
No. I don't know what happened.
It turns out Shipman was targeted by a small group of loosely connected people, most with some criminal records, and all tied together by a Republican operative in this rural county, a convicted felon, convicted of insurance fraud, who was also connected to questionable absentee ballot activity in another election, McCrae Dallas.
Hi, McCrae Dallas. This is Drew Griffin with CNN, trying to call you on every phone I can find for you.
Dallas appears to be in hiding. He worked for the campaign of Republican congressional candidate Mark Harris, who won by just 905 votes. Harris's campaign admits the State Board of Elections is asking for documents for its investigation and emphasized that if McCrae Dallas broke the law, the campaign was not aware of any illegal conduct in connection with the 9th District race. The campaign intends to cooperate fully with the investigation. As for the McCrae Dallas operation, here is what Democrats allege. Dallas's ex-wife, relatives, and friends fanned out across Bladen County, registering people to vote, requesting absentee ballots for them. Then, later signed the ballots themselves as witnesses. A handful of people signing more than 100 ballots.
She seemed local because she left me a sandwich from a local sandwich shop.
Lacey Allison also wasn't planning to vote until a woman showed up with an application.
So you filled out an application for an absentee ballot?
No. She filled it out. She said she was going to bring it back for me to sign, and I never saw her again.
Allison, turns out, had the woman's number. She's the daughter of one of McCrae Dallas's ex-wives, Lisa Britt, who has signed 42 of the suspected ballots.
Hi, Lisa. This is Drew Griffin with CNN. I'm recording this call. I want to ask you about these absentee ballots. Can you tell us what's going on here?
I have no comment, baby. Thank you.
Another woman, Ginger Eason, who signed 30 ballots, told CNN affiliate WSOC that Dallas paid her between $75 and $100 to harvest ballots. and she handed them in to Dallas.
Like I said, I don't know nothing what happened after I dropped them off. Look.
So you don't know for certainty whether they were sent to the elections office?
No, I don't.
Besides the multiple witness signatures, there are also...
That's enough. Y'all kind of get the point of it, right? Don't want to spend too much time on that. So, can you see me? Yeah. Can you see me? Can you see me? So now, this is the Republican Party who calls everyone else snowflakes. This is the same Republican Party that blocked for 18 months Obama's Supreme Court justice. I was watching a documentary the other day on Monica Lewinsky, the Clinton scandal, everything that happened. You guys, if you guys haven't watched it, you should watch it. It's on A&E. It's an amazing documentary, actually. But one of the guys on there that they were interviewing made a statement, and it's great because there were a lot of people. You know how people talk about like a deep state kind of. And I guess in this sense, it was kind of it was these group of lawyers called the Elves. That's what they were called. And they were funding lawyers to find things against Bill Clinton because they didn't want him in office. And one of those lawyers happened to be Brett Kavanaugh. And I don't know if you guys remember Brett Kavanaugh's hearing when he said this is payback for the Clintons. And initially I was like, what is he talking about Clintons? That just seemed so random in my head. I'm like, Clintons ain't got nothing, what? And so what happened, he was a part of these lawyers who was funding this group of people who brought Paula, I think it was Paula Jean, the girl that said that he tried to he sexually harassed her and trying to find things out to get him out of office, which eventually got him impeached, right? So this is that Republican Party. And one of the guys said during that documentary, which I thought was very telling, he said when Democrats lose, they get sad. When Republicans lose, they get mad. And you see, and they just go after, and they're the most devious group of people. And it's not a wonder like why Congress can't get things done and why they can't get things done in Congress. I mean, you look how many things that they blocked with Obama just because he was black, for the most part. You know what I mean? I mean, he had to push Obamacare through. He had to just use his majority before he lost the House and the Senate in 2010 to just push it through because he knew they wasn't going to get it done. And then obviously you saw after that, the majority of everything else had to be an executive order, which is, starting to be overturned by Donald Trump. So it's amazing that we're the crybabies, but soon as something doesn't go wrong, I don't want to say we, because I honestly feel like the Democratic Party is just another wing of the Republican Party. I think they all have the same intentions, really, for the most part. But it's amazing for them to cry the way that they cry. And now you see all these things going on with this guy who CNN brought up about what's going on in Virginia with them actually, committing voter fraud when they claim that California and every other state that leans blue is committing that. And you kind of see, and then you see what's going on in Wisconsin and Michigan. I want to see if I can find this article right quick about Michigan and Wisconsin. I was reading it earlier. Hopefully I didn't lose it. Shoot. I think I did while I was getting everything together. Let me find it right quick. Wisconsin, Michigan Republicans. Okay, there you go. Michigan Republicans try to, Wisconsin, this is CNN politics. Wisconsin and Michigan Republicans try to undermine Democratic election wins. Republicans in Wisconsin and Michigan were whipped out of their seats, whipped out of their state top offices in November. But before Democrats can take their places next year, the GOP lawmakers in both states are moving to strip the incoming leaders of key powers. Jeez. Let's see. Most of the attention was centered on Wisconsin, where Republicans are in the midst of an extraordinary session designed to effectively prevent Democrat Governor-elect Tony Evers and incoming Attorney General Josh Kaul from delivering on their campaign promises. Wisconsin Republican-led Assembly and Senate passed two of the measures they are considering. Brett Kudeback, spokesman for the governor-elect, told CNN Wednesday both bills will now go to Governor Scott Walker for his consideration. So obviously Scott Walker is going to sign them in. Excuse me. One of the bills would require permission from the state legislator before the state executive branch could make waivers or changes to public assistance programs, including work and drug testing requirements for able-bodied adults. And the lame duck governor signed those bills and others still under debate. The state could reduce its number of early voting days, restrict gubernatorial appointees to powerful economic agencies, and require legislative backing for certain decisions economic agencies, and require legislative backing for certain decisions traditionally made by the Attorney General and Governor, a move that would likely block call from withdrawing the state from a federal lawsuit against Obama. So they have a lawsuit against Obama trying to block certain amenities that come with Obamacare. And this is what's going on in Wisconsin and Michigan, which is, amazing. And I don't want to dig too deep into it, but I just want you guys to see like the hypocrisy of the Republican Party. And we're kind of going to go further into what is now the Republican Party. Back in the day, for the most part, I'm talking about like the 19th century and everything, the Republican Party, today's disposition of the Republican Party reflects the disposition of the Democratic Party during the 19th century. And I know I kind of tell you guys sometimes that I mention it sometimes that I watch CNN, both CNN and Fox, because I think that you just need to. I don't think that you should always fill your mind with just people that you agree with. You should also fill your mind with people you don't agree with. You know what I mean? Because if I'm preaching to the choir, like, what's changing? You guys agree with probably 70% of the things I say. Like, who am I convincing? What am I actually doing if I'm not trying to provoke, or convince people that don't kind of see things my way, or at least open to hear. So I always want to hear both sides of what what we consider liberal news versus conservative news. And let me tell you, boy, sometimes watching Fox it's almost unbearable, to say the least. And it's just like, Jesus Christ, do they honestly believe what they're saying right now? But there was a segment last night. There was a segment last night that I was watching, and they were talking about, I guess the University of North Carolina proposed to keep the Silent Sam. It's another Confederate statue. The students there tore it down, and they're trying to figure out what they want to do with the statue. If they want to either take it down or put it in some type of museum or some type of building, so it could still be there to show the historical context, but not ultimately be destroyed. And so she had a student from UNC opposing it and for taking the Confederacy down. And the conversation, I just thought, obviously was one-sided, but it was amazing. And I kind of want to just talk about that because it provoked me to just start looking at all these, looking up this historical context and things. So I want you guys to check that out, and then we can talk from there. So let me see, do I have it? Laura Ingraham, it was her show. So we'll watch some of that. It's a bit long, so we'll just watch some of it, and then we can kind of talk about it. So hurry up and turn this around. I want the transition to be too long.
Now, back in August, protesters at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, took it upon themselves to rip down a Confederate statue. Well, it was the Silent Sam statue, and it honored UNC students who had fought for the Confederacy in the Civil War. Over the last few years, the statue has been labeled a celebration of white supremacy by some, and as a piece of history by others. Well, yesterday, the university board announced a plan to house the statue in a new $5 million history and education center on the edge of campus, where it would be properly contextualized. But even as she announced the plan, Chancellor Carol Folt was clearly not entirely on board.
I have a preference to move it off campus, but like everyone here, I swore to obey the law. And sometimes you don't agree with laws, but I don't have the privilege of choosing which laws I agree with and which ones I do not.
How brave. Well, a 2015 North Carolina law forbids agencies from permanently removing and relocating state-owned memorials or statues. And North Carolina likely passed the law to protect against what it saw happening across the country. What's been happening? Well, nationally, since 2015, more than 100 Confederate monuments and statues have been removed. Well, students, protesters, and faculty members at UNC want the same fate to befall Silent Sam. The North Carolina law be damned. Forget about it. They took to the campus Monday night to protest the plan to house the statue in a new building.
No KKK, no fascist USA. Hey, hey, ho, ho. Silent Sam has got to go.
UNC is not concerned about preserving history. It is concerned about not upsetting its racist donors and the Board of Trustees and Carol Folt.
I am disappointed to be associated with an institution that continuously seeks to protect and glorify the white supremacists who love to hate us.
To enable white supremacy is to perpetuate white supremacy, and that is exactly what the Board of Trustees and Carol Folt are doing right now.
It's funny how they're reading it off their phones. Well, who needs paper? But that history were so and that cut and dried. There's a movement, particularly among the young, to hate the past and eradicate anything they find objectionable or troubling. And look, every country, all history, has its bad sides and has its good sides. Good stuff, bad stuff. But this recalls the kind of destructive mindset of, let's say, ISIS. Think about ISIS, what they did. They pillaged and they wiped away irreplaceable historical and religious monuments from Palmyra, remember, in Syria, simply because they could. It was offensive to them. Now, no matter what one thinks of the way this was all treated after the Civil War, whether they should build these monuments or not, this happened, okay? The Confederacy happened. And we owe it to the future to leave history as it existed undisturbed. Continue to debate it. Have conversations about it. But why not allow future generations the opportunity to mark this history, process it, and come to their own conclusions? Put up another statue commemorating the slaves who were abused and killed adjacent to Silent Sam. But to destroy instead of engage, to defy the law instead of respect it, is no way to honor the past or the future or to highlight all the gains America has made. Now, by committing acts of violence to get your own way and defying laws to remove figures that you find offensive, you start to look a little bit like the thing you're protesting. Should you succeed, by the way, in the future, some other mob might well tear down your statue because they themselves find what you did offensive. So where does it all end? And you would have, taught them that, it's fine to destroy all trace of whatever we find objectionable in the past. Now let's hope the board of UNC, North Carolina's Historical Commission, has less destructive tendencies. We can hope. And that's the angle. Joining me now, two students from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, Magdalena Horzempa, who's a student supportive of the Silent Sam statue on campus, and Alana Edwards is the president of the UNC Young Democrats, a group adamantly opposed to the statue's presence anywhere on campus. Now, Alana, it seems that the first step for critics of these statues was to move them out of the public square and into historical buildings. Okay, so that happened, or that was happening, but now that's offensive. So where does this ever end? What do you propose be done with this statue? You can't have it in the public, out in the public where it always has been. Can't move it to the building, so what now?
Well, I think with Silent Sam down, it is time to start contextualizing the past of the monument. And I think one thing I would like to bring up is that when you look at when this monument was erected, it was 1913, the height of the Jim Crow era, and the dedication speeches espoused white supremacy. And personally, I'm a proud Southerner, and I had ancestors fighting on both sides of the war, and I value the lessons to be learned from the Civil War. But I see this monument as destructive and a symbol of a different era entirely, and not, any actions of UNC students who served during that time, but as when it was dedicated in 1913, that era of white supremacy. And so while there's no clear-cut solution, I do think, and state law is very restrictive, I think that it deserves a place off campus where it can be placed within the proper context of which it was erected.
So let's go to you, Magdalena, on this. What should happen to this statue? There is a law, a state law, passed unanimously, I believe, in the state, one chamber of the State House, but then ultimately it was signed into law. That exists. You can't just, remove things never to be seen again. These are state-owned memorials, and it says very clearly, a monument, memorial, or work of art owned by the state may not be removed, relocated, or altered in any way without the approval of the North Carolina Historical Commission. They wanted to, basically stop these things from disappearing in the middle of the night, as we saw in places like in New Orleans, where statues have been removed, never to be seen again. So Magdalena, what happens next?
So next, of course, I feel that if these students are going to protest on the north side of campus, they're absolutely going to continue protesting the statue being in the new museum and education center on the south side of campus. I feel that only placing the monument on the south side of campus in a building allows UNC administration to ignore the problem that's going on campus. And that's liberal students feeling that they can run the university and try and encompass and overthrow the opinions of the majority and only allow the public to see the vocal minority that's taking place. In my capacity as the chairwoman of UNC College Republicans, I've said before, I do not condone any sort of mob rule or anarchist activity on campus, and for these students to feel that it was okay to take this statue down in the very beginning in August, that's absolutely not okay. Chancellor Folt let them get away with it. UNC police, Chapel Hill police, and the lack of consequences from events in Durham also made students think that they could get away with something like this, and that's absolutely not.
Alana, this is, when you look at these images, This is like mob rule. I mean, you rip something down, you say, well, I'm offended by it, and we're all supposed to throw you a parade. I mean, welcome to the world. I mean, I'm kind of tired of the snowflake line, and all the college students are snowflakes. But the real world is filled with complicated, very difficult dilemmas for everyone. You know, you might not like. I agree, and I think you might not like the lyrics to a song you hear on the radio. Maybe you like the tune, but you don't like the lyrics. Well, I guess you could say, well, it offends me. That should be banned because it objectifies women as just a piece of, you know, sexual gratification or something. I mean, pretty much everybody is offended by something. Like, you know what I'm offended by? I'm offended by students who refuse to see that the progress that has been made in the United States of America and seem to want to find some type of, I don't know if it's belonging or relevance in a world where moral relativism actually kind of reigns supreme. But it looks like students are, it's kind of like a social gathering almost. Like, what can we tear down today, or how can we get on YouTube, or how can we, you know, and I'm glad you're on with us tonight to try to.
I think we kind of get that point. I just want to show you one more thing, small thing, and we can start talking. That's an American soldier. Interesting, isn't it? That seemed quite all right. I don't know if any of you guys remember that time in our history, but if you do, you'll remember that the rhetoric was a little different. If you guys remember that time in our history when we took down Saddam Hussein, and we took down that monument, a monument that served, or that was a representation of oppression, of corruption, of a lack of humanity. We celebrated that. If you guys didn't recognize, those were American soldiers on top of the erect monument of Saddam Hussein that actually assisted in taking it down. And you probably couldn't see it in the frame, but the thing that had actually put it down was a rope connected to U.S. military tank that helped bring the statue of Saddam Hussein down to represent freedom, hope, liberty, and justice for all. That was one of George W. Bush's intentions and the reason why he said that he was invading Iraq, which was probably not true. I think it was oil, and he was mad that at one point, if you guys didn't know, Saddam tried to assassinate H.W. Bush. You guys can look that up. But we celebrated that. We talked about that. Look at the liberated people. They're liberated. They feel liberated. You saw that. It was almost as much of a celebration for us as it was for them. Taking down something that represented oppression. But somehow, Laura Ingraham, and you know, I understand why, and I don't want to exhaust myself by being turned off, because I feel like I'm about to argue a point, and I'm sure she knows. Right? Some people just want to say what they want to say, and obviously they know their audience, so they just say what they feel like their audience want to hear. But she talked about honoring that having Silent Sam, or General Lee, or any other Confederate monuments was there to honor the past, to honor. I mean, first off, if that's what we did, if we just honored the past, why don't we talk about Benedict Arnold? I mean, really, we look at him as a traitor, and anytime someone references a person that did something wrong or betrayed, you say you're a Benedict Arnold. That's what they would say. Benedict Arnold helped us win in the Revolutionary War 2 major battles before he went on the other side, and it was all based on him wanting to be George Washington or whatever, not being able to go up in the ranks. But he did a lot of good before he actually did that. So why we're not celebrating that? It's parallel to the Confederacy. The Confederacy went against the Union. So Davis was the president, right? So they went against the Union. They were actual traitors. If that's what it's about, if that's what we stand for, like, why are we even celebrating it at all? So, to me, it bothered me. The hypocrisy bothers me. Anytime a black person try to stand up for something, and for the most part, the thing that we're standing up for is just to be accepted as a human, to have the same inalienable rights that you professed in the Declaration of Independence. That's it. Historically speaking, that's it. How many times have you seen an erect statue of Hitler commemorating because it's history? Come on, that's absurd. And just to say it's to commemorate history, it's a complete lie. It's to erase and water down the history. That's what it's doing. It wasn't to commemorate and to remember. It was, for one, to try to rewrite the history of the Confederacy, and two, to let those black people know that you're still it's like a symbol that we're still here and you're still inferior. Period, point blank. I kind of wrote something down like, these monuments wasn't to remember these men, but as an effort to support. I guess it was a cult called a lost cause. These are the people that I guess put up these, got the money together and got these different organizations together to, like the Daughters of the Confederacy, things like that, to actually fund these monuments being put up. That wasn't their intention. Through these monuments, they would, rewrite history. They tried to rewrite history. They tried to tell another story. You know, to me, it seems like if that was the case, if the case was to commemorate history, to remember history, why aren't they talking about what happened in the South? Why aren't they, when you have these erect soldiers, why, you know, having the reason for the Civil War? You know what I mean? Why the South was the South? Why did the South break from the Union? Look, I mean, if you want to give it full context, if that's what we're doing, if we're remembering history, it was to rewrite, it was to water it down. It was to take away the brutality, take away the death, the lynching, and have this sort of nostalgic memory of the Confederacy. Even knowing like what it did to black people, what the Confederacy represented. You know, a lot of times, you know, some people may walk past the Confederacy and they may not see anything. You know, some people can walk past it. You know, a white person or whoever will walk past it and they won't, you know, it may not bother them. They may look at it, they may celebrate, but it doesn't do what it does to me. When I walk past a statue, a monument of the Confederacy, I automatically go back in history. I think about the promises never filled. You know? I think about in the 1600s, the laws that were put in place that made it legal for a slave master to kill his slave if he resists arrest or if he ran away. I think back to when they passed laws in the 1600s that made it illegal for a white person to marry a slave or a black person or a mulatto, what they would call, you know, a person that was mixed. When they passed laws that where blacks was not able to go to court or be represented in court or to even file a case if it concerns a white Christian. I go back and think about Bacon's rebellion, when at one point it seemed that we were going to be able to get out of this rut, you know, during the beginning of the colonies coming, when you had a lot of slaves and a lot of indentured servants all kind of living together, because it, you know, before it became an industry, slavery, you know, people used to only be slaves for a certain period of time. And then they would get land like further east away from like the main, where, you know, the coast of Virginia and stuff. So I think about how that failed, how once the rebellion, once that happened and once Bacon died, how they then recognized that an uprising was happening between classes, that they started to change these laws to make it where, you know, a black person could never get out of slavery, where their children will then be born into slavery, where they could not be hold a seat in office at all. You know what I mean? I look at that's what I think about when I pass by one of those monuments. I think about the revolution. I think about the Revolutionary War when the Declaration of Independence, when it said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I remember how that didn't include me. I remember how, even though it didn't include me, we still fought. And I was still stuck in a rut after 1781. And this is like at the end of the war. I think about going to the Civil War when there were promises of emancipation, and how that was then dwarfed once Abraham Lincoln was shot, and the president was Andrew Johnson. And even though he was a Republican, he was a Southerner, and he agreed with Southern rights, and he pardoned all the Confederates that were supposed to go to trial, and allowed them to then continue to govern their own states, and they were able to wreck and undermine Reconstruction. I remember how then there were Jim Crow laws that was put into place that allowed over 4,000 lynchings over a 70-year period. 4,000 lynchings. And there were no one had to go to trial for those. It was just black people who were lynched. When I pass by those, I think about me having to start a black church because I wasn't allowed in white churches. Having to start something like the NAACP because we wasn't allowed to go to certain schools. We wasn't allowed to do these certain things, so we had to kind of start our own because we couldn't get into the one that was supposed to be status quo because we were black. When I pass by these statues, I think about Martin Luther King walking in peace and having bottles and bricks being thrown at him and being called the enemy of the state, the enemy of America. And he didn't harm a fly. I think about Harriet Tubman, Muhammad Ali, having his career stripped from him, threatened to go to jail for 3 years because he didn't believe in a war that we found in retrospect was actually somewhere we shouldn't have been, and that Nixon and LBJ had been lying to the country. I think about 20 years later, when 4 police officers were acquitted after we saw on tape with our own eyes them beating the hell out of a man named Rodney King. I think about Trayvon Martin going home with Skittles and a nice tea and being shot to death in the middle of the street. That's what I think about. All those thoughts run into my head when I think about those Confederate soldiers and the Confederacy and how far we still have to go in America for people, for black people, for Hispanic people to be liberated, to be just looked at as an American instead of an African American. Because that dash means a lot. That small dash allows me to feel inferior or less than an American. So at some point, if we can actually just be honest or empathetic and truthful about our history. Laura Ingraham talked about commemorating and honoring the history. Why aren't there any monuments of slave ships? Monuments of Harriet Tubman. I mean, she was a huge part of the Civil War. Monuments of the black soldiers that fought in the Civil War for rights and ended up having to fight another 100 years before those small rights could somewhat be realized. Or how about just actually teaching our kids the actual history of this country? Because if there's anyone that's erasing history, if there's anyone that's erasing history, it's the daughters of the Confederacy, or the cult called the Lost Cause, who want to honor and celebrate people who held a certain group of people in captivity. Even during the hypocrisy of the Revolutionary War. Even one time during the Revolutionary War, there was a statement that actually started to gain steam in what actually mobilized the colonies to come together for this. Initially, it was just kind of a fight to show, to just try to get some leverage. It kind of turned into a revolutionary war for independence after a while. But there was something that's actually worth mentioning, that revolutionary rhetoric and redefining slavery. So let me just read this. And this is just talking about the Revolutionary War and what happened. But it says, the widespread ownership of slavery had a significant implications. During the battle with Britain during the 1760s and 1770s, American patriots argued that the taxing the colonies without their consent. So obviously we know that the queen, the king at the time, kept taxing the colonies, and there was a certain protocol where they would have to go through, where they had representatives that actually lived on the colony that would then, they would go through, and there would be kind of this discussion or debate on whether people should get more taxes or not. And so what the king started doing is bypassing that and just started taxing. So just give you that. So American patriots argued that taxing the colonies without their consent reduced the colonists to the status of slaves. Since individuals in all colonies owned slaves, this rhetoric had enormous emotional renaissance throughout the colonies and helped turn the colonists against the mother country. Moreover, once the colonists started protesting against their own enslavement, it was hard to deny the fundamental contradictions that slavery established. Enslavement for black people and freedom for white people. Awareness of this contradiction forced white Americans to look at slavery in a new light. If Americans chose to continue to enslave black people, they would have to devise a new argument to justify slavery. It was at this time the arguments about blacks' inherent racial inferiority emerged to rationalize this institution. So what they're saying is, once they saw the contradiction, once it was in their face, they started to use another argument that we enslave black people because they're inferior. They're an inferior species. So that then became the argument. This kind of had two consequences, right? It's amazing to hear about it, because this is something real. This the argument that they use, the argument that they argued when they were in. Who just gave me $5? Somebody just gave me $5. That's great. Oh, Paul gave me $2. What's up, Paul? Appreciate you pimping. And Michael, five euros. So €5, what is that, like $7? Something like that. Appreciate you, player. So that rhetoric of slaves being slaves, this was something that actually really permeated throughout the colonies. That's what they would use to argue the fact when the Virginia Congress, I think it was called I think it was the Virginia Congress. The Virginia delegates, when they were debating whether they should, have this revolution or not, that was the rhetoric for the people that wanted to have it. Enslavement, in chains. And so this thing kind of had a twofold consequence. One was the pure hypocrisy in that you had these white people talking about being slaves, and they're not going to be slaves, and they would rather die than be slaves, but at the same time own slaves themselves. And it also then started to, and mainly in the North, because in the North, a lot of the white people there, slavery wasn't a full, so because of the institution of slavery in the South, agriculture, so they were making a lot of money, where it wasn't so much in the North, right? It was some slaves in the North. They still had certain slaves, but they would be used like inside the home and things like that. So it wasn't a real institution in the North as it was in the South. But this hypocrisy, this contradiction was then kind of the driving force that, there were two civil rights acts. One was during the mid 1800s, right before the Civil War, after the Civil War, and then obviously the one that was passed by LBJ. So it did twofold. It made them change their argument because slavery wasn't going to stop because there was a lot of money involved. But then for a lot of people that didn't own slaves, that didn't make all their money during enslaving people, it had them realizing what they were doing was actually wrong. And this attitude is what propelled the Republican Party. And once the Republican Party was formed, that was kind of their push, was to end slavery. The abolitionists and all that was kind of their push. So it did two things, and one positive, obviously, and one more negative. But, if we ever want to get over race in this country, we have to start talking about it. If we ever want to get over racism, we have to acknowledge our history. And I mean the real history, true history, the people's history. Because that's the only way. You can't gaslight me. Black people have been gaslit for thousands of years. You can't just not acknowledge what happened like it didn't happen and want to move on and not hold on to stuff. That's the normal. When someone brings up slavery, why are you holding on to that? But you want to hold on to the Confederacy. That's what we want to hold on to, the Confederacy, right? You want to hold on to the Confederacy. Why? Because you romanticized it. You watered it down. But until we have these discussions, until we can honestly talk about our history and reconcile, we're going to continue to have these. Because no one knows. You have a generation of kids that don't even really know what happened in our history. They have some teachers, the school district, I forgot what county in Texas, but arguing to put in that they shipped black workers to America to work as crop holders or crop share workers or something like that. It's absurd because they want to water it down. But we can talk about any other country that's enslaved their people, that's caused genocides, and we'll put them right out. We'll tear down a statue of Saddam Hussein and celebrate it and call it might and call a president looking presidential. And we can do all that. But when it comes to our past, get over it. Look at what we gave you. You know? So, yeah. I will be back Friday with some more and some more. So you guys enjoy. Appreciate you tuning in with me. You guys staying on point with me. Sorry that I was trying to follow along, but I kind of got caught up in my emotions a little bit. But I appreciate you guys, and I will talk to you later. Peace.